I'd like to call to order the August 19, 2008 Planning and Zoning Commission. Do announce that we have a quorum present. Item 2 on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the August 5th, 2008 meeting. Do I have any additions, corrections, motion?
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
A motion from Karen, second from Bill. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Minutes of the August 5th meeting are approved. Item 3 on the agenda is consent agenda plats. Item 3A is final plat of National Indoor Storage Edition, Lot 1, Block A, 5.40 acre tract, zone light industrial, located at 498 East State Highway 121. Gene or David?
The plat meets all the requirements of the general development ordinance, and staff is recommending approval.
Thank you, David. Do we have any comments from the commissioners on this one? Do we have a motion on item 3A?
Make a motion to approve item, recommend approval to the city council for item 3A.
Second.
I have a motion from Karen and a second from Jim. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
That motion was to approve, correct?
Correct.
Yes. In a roundabout way, yes, it was. Item 4 is regular hearing plats. Item 4A is final plat of Settlers Village Phase 2, a 9.02 acre parcel zone townhouse, bounded by Rockbrook Drive on the west, Vista Ridge Mall Drive on the south, and Settlers Village Phase 1 on the east.
Most of you should be familiar with Settlers Village. As a matter of fact, Phase 1, quite a bit of it has already been built out. Phase 2 was previously platted. Then about 6 months ago, the developer decided to change product types from a 24-foot wide 3-story unit to a 26-foot wide 2-story unit. So because the new units are going to be 2 feet wider, all the lot lines had to be adjusted. So rather than replat Phase 2, you may recall that back in April, they came through with a vacation plat of Phase 2, and now they're coming back with a brand new plat of Phase 2 with the wider lots. The new plat is substantially the same as the previous plat, except it has, I believe, 6 fewer residential lots, and the lots that they have are 2 feet wider. Otherwise, everything else is the same. When the original preliminary plat was approved back in, I want to say, November of 2004, there was a list of about 9 variances that were approved with that preliminary plat. If this were simply a replat of that original plat, then we could probably have moved along with just a simple replat and no variances. But because this is technically a brand-new plat, we do have to visit the variances again because it is a brand-new plat. There have been some changes, though, since those original variances were granted. The General Development Ordinance has been revised, I believe, back in 2005. We made a number of revisions specific to townhouse developments. So some of the original variances are no longer applicable because those standards have been written into the General Development Ordinance now. One of the variances had to do with tree removal, or an early tree removal prior to, I guess, doing the final plat, and of course that's already been done. There are no trees on the site, so that variance isn't applicable. The only thing we have left are the 4 variances that we're presenting along with this particular plat. First variance is to waive required alleys for single-family residential subdivisions. Both Phase 1 and the original plat of Phase 2 were approved without alleys. As I indicated earlier, Phase 1 has already been built in terms of infrastructure. Many of the homes are already built. They're all front entry. At this stage of the game, to require alleys in Phase 2 would significantly reduce the lot count, and it would make it very difficult to meet minimum lot sizes. So just from a matter of practicability, staff is recommending approval of the first variance. The second variance is to allow a wooden screening fence in lieu of a 6-foot masonry screening wall along the north property line. The general development ordinance requires a masonry screening wall between single-family residential and commercial development. In this particular case, there's an 8 to a 10-foot elevation difference between Settlers Village and the commercial development to the north. There's a retaining wall, and then if there were going to be a masonry wall, it would be sitting on top of this retaining wall. This variance was originally granted for the entire subdivision when the developers, Ashton Woods, built Phase 1. They went ahead and they built the entire retaining wall and wooden screening fence at the same time. So at this point in time, if this variance were not granted, that means that the developer would have to remove the wall adjacent to Phase 2 and replace it with a masonry screening wall. Staff is recommending approval of the variance for the most part because it is an existing wall, and the subdivision that's being proposed is substantially the same as what was previously approved. So we would assume that there's been no change that would precipitate a need to change out the type of screening. Third variance is to allow a maximum of 40% non-masonry materials for the screening wall adjacent to the thoroughfares, which is Rockbrook Drive and Vista Ridge Mall Drive. The general development ordinance does allow 40% wrought iron panels where houses are going to side onto a thoroughfare, but when houses back up to a thoroughfare, it has to be a solid masonry screening wall. This variance was also considered with the first plat, and you've got an exhibit in your backup that shows in a red color where the existing wrought iron panels are. Again, this fence, just like the wooden screening fence along the north, was all built at the same time as Phase 1, even though they didn't build the rest of the infrastructure or any houses in Phase 2. This is the same situation where if the variance was not granted, the developer would be required to remove the existing screening wall, or at least modify the existing screening wall to make it a solid masonry wall. Again, staff made the assumption that because this is this subdivision is substantially the same, that there was really no reason to replace the existing screening wall with a solid wall based on the new plat. The backup goes into some more detail with regard to the specifics of the deed restrictions and how that's going to work with regard to privacy matters and things of that nature. The last variance also has to do with the screening wall adjacent to the thoroughfares. The developers have requested that the screening wall adjacent to Rockbrook and Vista Ridge Mall Drive be be privately maintained by the homeowners association. The general development ordinance requires screening walls adjacent to public thoroughfares to be publicly maintained for the simple reason that in most cases individual homeowners are not financially or physically capable of maintaining a masonry screening wall. And there's been trouble with older homeowners associations in the past not being properly funded and dissolving and leaving what was a private wall, up to either the homeowners or for the city to take over after the fact. In this particular case, when the original subdivision was platted, both the development staff and our attorneys reviewed the HOA documents, and we were convinced that the HOA is set up to properly fund maintenance of the screening wall. So staff is recommending that this screening wall be privately maintained as originally intended. In addition, the screening wall, which again is already constructed, is much more ornamental than a typical public screening wall, and in fact much more so than what the city would typically want to try to maintain. And the ornamentation on the wall matches a lot of the elements within the subdivision, so the developer would rather the homeowners association maintain the wall. The wall is located outside of the right-of-way in a private wall maintenance easement. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have. I know the applicant is here this evening as well as their engineer in case you have any questions of them.
Thank you, David. Before I open up the public hearing, any comments for David from commissioners? No?
So did people just not want to walk up to a third floor? Was that the reason they changed the...
Well, I think that had something to do with it. We talked to the developer in our Wednesday development review meeting many months ago, and the three-story product, from what I understand, wasn't selling as quickly as they were hoping. They might want to clarify that, or if they have a different idea, but I think that's pretty much the way they explained it to us.
I have one question, David. How do we normally escrow funds to cover masonry screening walls that the city maintains?
Yes.
So are they not doing that? What would normally be?
No, they're not doing that. If this were going to be a public screening wall adjacent to the thoroughfares, they would have to place 20% of the cost of that wall in a maintenance account with the city. What they've done is they've set up the funding for their HOA to cover that maintenance. And again, those documents and that funding mechanism have been reviewed by city staff as well as our attorneys. And we were fairly well convinced that it's set up appropriately to have perpetual maintenance of the wall.
Anything else? At this time, I'll open the public hearing for item 4A. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this item, please step forward, state your name. If there's no one, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion from Karen, second from Alvin, to close the public hearing on item 4A. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public hearing is closed. So do we have any comments on these remaining four before we put this to a vote? Anything? Then I'll entertain a motion to recommend approval for item 4A with the variances.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Bill and a second from Karen to recommend approval of item 4A to the City Council with the four variances. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 is other business. Do we have anything Staff?
You all may have, or should have, perhaps, gotten a card or something about the upcoming annual Board Commission Committee banquet. It'll be September 18th, a Thursday, I believe, at the Hilton Garden Inn. So check your calendar, and if you're able to attend, please give the City Secretary's office a call and let her know. If you're not able to attend, you might call her and let her know that at least you can't come. If you'd like to let her know. Thanks.
Thank you, Gene. Anything else from the commissioners?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion from Karen to adjourn. Second?
Second.
Second from Alvin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, meeting's adjourned.